They never expected a rescue call to come from 35,000 feet above Mozambique, least of all from the cargo hold. Content warning. This story contains references to international crime, endangered animals, and complex law enforcement operations. No graphic descriptions of violence. Imagine you're gliding above the clouds, coffee stale in your cup, swinging between humdrum safety demonstrations and pretzel wrappers at 3 a.m., somewhere over the Indian Ocean. Now imagine, just as you're preparing to land, you find a desperate hand-scrawled note tucked into a maintenance panel, begging for help, not for a human, but for the forgotten creatures stowed beneath your feet. This is exactly what happened to Tessa Arman, a 34-year-old flight attendant for Azul Sky Airlines, and in the fall of 2019, she found herself at the jagged edge between the everyday and a billion-dollar black market none of us are meant to see. Tessa considered herself a lifer, a quote, sky rat, close quote, clocking nearly 800,000 miles in a patchwork of blue uniforms and little rolling suitcases. Her colleagues called her, quote, the queen of calm, quote, because even when you've got an elderly man fainting in 11D and a toddler projectile vomiting, well, chaos is just part of service at 37,000 feet. Tessa's schedule that week sent her on the Sao Paulo-Johannesburg loop, a cargo-heavy run famous for its long overnights and gruff crew. Most of the time, her layovers blended together, one airport coffee shop indistinguishable from the next. But she'd noticed something strange these past flights. Additional security near the tarmac, and a set of quote, cargo handlers who never seemed to make eye contact. Little details piled up, as little details do. Unlabeled crates, manifests with blank, quote, contents fields. The way the cargo teams would hum in private code words while handling certain shipments. On the fourth overnight out of Sao Paulo, Tessa found herself alone in Galley B, sipping dregs of coffee at 2:04 a.m. The aircraft, a Boeing 777, shuddered gently as they banked south over Central Africa. Everyone else was sacked out or scrolling memes in the crew rest. That's when she heard it. Faint, rhythmic tapping. Like someone mapping Morse code on metal. Tessa froze. There it was again. Urgent, insistent. Not mechanical, but human. At first, she brushed it off. Could have been turbulence, or even a galley trolley rolling. But something about the sound. It set off a thread of nerves running from her toes to her scalp. She crept toward the forward service door, pressed her ear to the wall, and heard the sound again, distinctly from the lower cargo hold. The holds are off limits to cabin crew during flight, but anxiety gnawed at Tessa. She checked her watch, 4 hours till touchdown in Johannesburg, plenty of time for curiosity to become action. She called down to Liam, the first officer, requesting a permitted quick visual as soon as they landed. Sure, he said, not looking up from his logbook. But I'd hold your nose. These animal shipments always stink. The comment hung in Tessa's mind until wheels touched down. Most people don't realize that commercial airlines often transport animals. Sometimes rabbits destined for research, sometimes sports horses with their own business class stalls. But live exotic animals require labyrinthine paperwork and special handlers, a process that's supposed to safeguard them but inevitably creates loopholes. Tessa's first clue that something was very wrong. The way the ground crew in Johannesburg, locals, not her regular team, avoided her questions. When she asked about the special livestock noted on the manifest, 2 crewmen exchanged a look. One muttered, "Not our business, ma'am." Another rolled his eyes and turned away, far too quickly. Feeling a pit in her stomach, Tessa made her way towards cargo door 2R as soon as passenger deplaning had finished. The hold was cavernous and cold, with threatening shadows cast by towering crates, each tagged with coded stickers but no live animal warning labels. She counted 3 large containers that looked wrong. One had ventilation holes but smelled so pungent, like musk and ammonia mixed, it stung her eyes.
What's going on here?
She demanded of a man in an orange vest.
Routine drop. Nothing to see. Please clear the bay.
He retorted. Then she saw it, wedged beside the container, a folded piece of paper, stained and torn, written in frantic capital letters. She snatched it up, heart thumping. On it, "They cannot breathe. Cages unlocked. Help!" The signature, a friend. For a moment, noise receded. Tessa stood completely alone with the note in her trembling hands. When you grow up in the backwater of Sao Paulo's suburbs, you learn to spot scams. Tessa's mother had drilled into her. Curiosity's how the rat finds poison, chica. Stay out of other people's troubles. But the note felt too urgent, too raw, to be dismissed. She thought of her nephew, obsessed with wildlife documentaries, and the stories he'd told her. Elephants slaughtered for ivory, pangolins smuggled in plastic totes, parrots with brilliant green wings packed into mail parcels. And she realized, perhaps for the first time, that the invisible world beneath the floorboards of her own job might be hiding unimaginable suffering. She snapped a photo of the note in crates and messaged Maria, her friend in airline security. "We need to talk. Urgent, animal cargo." "Please don't ignore," Maria replied with a phone icon. "Call now." Maria, Silva-headed Azul Skies security detail in Brazil. A former cop, infamous for her encyclopedic recall of every passenger blacklist in the hemisphere. To Maria, nothing about this case smelled right. Over a spotty international call, Tessa relayed the sequence of nighttime noises, evasive ground staff, and the letter. Maria's tones.
Listen, Tess, you need to log everything. Photos, timestamps. Note, do not confront anyone alone. Most animal shipments are legal, yes, but trafficking is the second most lucrative black market after drugs. And it's growing. UN numbers say up to $23 billion a year. If someone left that note, they might be watching. Forward what you have. I'll loop in federal police.
Tessa returned to crew rest, adrenaline paralyzing her attempts at sleep. Images flashed, crates cranked with living cargo, handlers whispering code words, and a friend in real danger, still somewhere in the system. Down below, on the airport tarmac, the questionable containers were shifted onto an unmarked truck, guarded by 3 men in matching windbreakers, their faces masked by sunglasses even in pre-dawn haze, blotted out in the sodium glow of security cams, each movement choreographed, practiced, undetected by regular airport staff. She knew one thing. She couldn't ignore this. The next morning, authorities, Brazilian and South African wildlife police, descended on the Johannesburg cargo terminal. But by then, the truck was long gone, and the cargo manifest had updated itself. All shipments transferred without issue. Zero trace of animals, zero names. Even the trackers logged in the system had blinked offline mysteriously. Maria sent Tessa a clipped WhatsApp.
Looks like official stonewalling. Stay safe. I'll check on whistleblowers near the terminal. Don't trust anyone. Delete texts after reading.
Suddenly, her comfortable, routine job felt like a front-row seat to something vast and menacing. A hidden economic engine powered by suffering, greed, and perhaps inside help. But the story didn't end with the cargo's disappearance. In fact, Tessa's discovery only deepened the mystery, thrusting her into an international conspiracy, implicating officials, handlers, and even airline insiders. What she didn't know, the billion-dollar animal smuggling ring she stumbled into was just about to bare its teeth. Later that week, Tessa found a soft toy, an elephant stitched from rough canvas, in her work locker back in Sao Paulo. It had never been there before. Inside, another scrap of paper reading simply, "You're being watched. Stop asking questions." Imagine you're back in the cramped jump seat, hurtling east under a weak sunrise. Your mind tumbles through questions. Who left that desperate note in the cargo hold? Who's behind the blank manifests, the veiled threats, and the stench of something more sinister beneath the endless hum of flight? Even as passengers snooze overhead, your small world vibrates with tension. Tessa's hands shook when she opened her locker to find the canvas elephant in mourning. She instantly looked for cameras. Was someone watching now? Or was this an old-school scare tactic meant to rattle her nerves until she fell silent? But as a flight attendant, you learn to project calm in the face of chaos. Tessa swapped uniforms and forced a laugh with her crew. But when she glanced at her phone, her pulse trebled. Maria, the ex-cop security agent, sent a message.
Official investigation opened. Stay invisible. Trust only me.
That was easier said than done. The next days, Tessa felt trapped between two worlds. One, the glossy, secure facade of international air travel. The other, a labyrinth of whispered conversations, sidelong glances, and the subtle choreography of illicit trade stretching from the cargo holds beneath her feet to the world's most exclusive animal markets. Pause and imagine the scale. The United Nations estimates the illegal wildlife trade is worth up to $23 billion per year, making it the fourth or even third largest black market globally, after drugs, arms, and human trafficking. The air transport sector is one of the key arteries for these crimes. In one 2020 report, air cargo accounted for the majority of all large-scale trafficking busts. Why the sky? Because airlines offer speed, scale, and plausible deniability. Cargo shipping, if delayed, can mean the death of valuable live goods, so traffickers exploit legitimate air cargo routes. Sometimes smugglers hide animals inside passenger luggage, with 109 live animals found recently in one couple's bags in Bangkok. More often, it's hidden in containers falsely labeled as live fish, frozen meat, or even musical instruments. Authorities have found tigers sedated in suitcases, rhino horns wrapped in bubble plastic, pangolins packed in boxes under false manifests, the work of sophisticated criminal networks, often staffed by airline insiders, customs officers, or coerced employees. Each link, from poacher to airport handler to middleman, is paid just enough to risk silence. In Mumbai, 2025, officers busted a passenger smuggling 16 live snakes, including a rare rhino rat snake, out of Thailand. Meanwhile, Johannesburg has earned a dark reputation as a transit hub for rhino horn and pangolin scales, bound for clandestine markets in China and Southeast Asia. Tessa, newly alert, watched her airline's inner workings with fresh eyes. She spotted faces that lingered at departure gates without reason, noticed ground security coordinators chatting a little too amicably with certain cargo teams. Even her friend Lisa, another flight attendant, whispered one evening, "There's big money moving through J&B, strange payouts, maybe you should back off." Maria encouraged vigilance, but warned,
These rings are tangled with serious criminals. They're not just freelancers, they pay off complicit handlers and sometimes even police. Some whistleblowers have just disappeared. Be careful.
On her next layover in Johannesburg, Tessa lost herself in the warren of terminals and checked cargo holds herself, stepping lightly, heart pounding. In Bay 9, she caught sight of a crate marked ornamental fish, but the weight and noise coming from inside made her stomach lurch. Filming discreetly, she caught the label, SEA-FRG/445, priority sensitive, no inspection. She sent the clip to Maria, who replied instantly,
That's a known code, means hands off to regular customs. Those are flagged for VIP movement.
Tessa felt a chill. Even the legal codes were being subverted for criminal use. For a second, let's widen the lens. What drives otherwise ordinary people, baggage handlers, customs agents, even ground crew, to risk jail for a crate of rare lizards or a silent shipment of parrots? A customs informant, when questioned by journalists, confided, "For some, it's just money. Weeks of salary in one night. For others, they're threatened. Move this crate or your family gets hurt. Once you're in, it's impossible to get out. Somebody always knows your name." Across the world, from Mumbai to Kashi to Sao Paulo, officials confront an endless tide. Fake paperwork, bribed inspectors, animals hidden inside teddy bears, or even hollowed-out musical equipment. The top trafficking methods: false cargo manifests, mislabeling as fish or machine parts, concealed in checked or hand baggage, use of new and unsuspecting mule passengers, often financially desperate, coerced airline or airport staff, made complicit by threats or bribes. It's not just about rare creatures. Each shipment means pain for the animals, chameleons and snakes crammed together, parrots suffocating, pangolins destined for soup tanks or magic medicine. Many never survive the journey. Tessa's footage, relayed through Maria, triggered a brief window of official interest. Wildlife officials in Brazil and South Africa cross-checked manifests and found a string of suspicious shipments, crates that shouldn't exist, moving at odd hours on private trucks, with customs stamps linked to the same 5 ground crew. But just as quickly, the records vanished. In the following days, Maria went dark.
Off the grid tracing sources. Watch your back.
Read her last text for a while. Alone, Tessa grew hyper-vigilant, watching her six, noting every unfamiliar face, every new locker scratch. She started receiving blocked calls, just silence, then a click. Her apartment door showed a pry mark. Lisa, clearly nervous, said, "You didn't find just criminals, Tess. You found something more organized, international. They're using us." Meanwhile, the airport continued its mechanical rituals. Flights in, flights out, cargo loaded and offloaded. The gears of a billion-dollar black market spun on. The turning point came one cold, pre-dawn morning when a note slipped under Tessa's hotel door contained 3 cryptic airport codes and listed times. She realized they matched her own crew schedule, and next to each the same SEA FRG/445 code from her video. Someone inside the network was feeding her insider information, but for what purpose, warning, or setup? Maria resurfaced just long enough to signal,
Meet at the staff cafe. Do not call. No electronics.
Sitting alone, Tessa reflected. How far does one go to protect something voiceless? Who can you trust when the entire system seems to click into place around silence? Her reflection was interrupted by Maria's arrival. Together, they mapped an emerging conspiracy. Forged documents, repeat clandestine shipments, ground staff suddenly living beyond their means, and a shadowy figure behind it all. A moniker, El Arquitecto, rumored to control the South America-Africa pipeline.
We need hard evidence, Tess.
Maria whispered.
And you're the only one left who's invisible enough to get it.
Imagine you're Tessa, standing in the glare of a half-lit cargo bay, adrenaline buzzing louder than the jet engines outside. Every muscle hums with the fear that at any moment, you or the animals you're desperately trying to help will vanish into the black hole beneath the world's airports. Just another lost shipment. Tessa clutched Maria's envelope, inside copies of falsified manifests, screen grabs of enigmatic communications, and, most dangerously, a streaming schedule for the next illicit transfer. A Sao Paulo departure in under 36 hours, with Class 4 cargo bound for Southeast Asia.
This is real enough for the police.
Maria whispered, voice gravelly with worry.
But if we go to the wrong people, we put a target on both of our backs.
They decided. Maria would slip their intel to an Interpol contact outside the country, while Tessa would try to quietly document the undercover operation from within. The following evening, Tessa barely recognized herself. Plain clothes, no badge, phone set to silent. As she moved through Sao Paulo's cargo ramps, her eyes flicked to every worker, every shadow. Airport lights blinked, cameras rotated in predictable sweeps. She focused on Bay 4, where a group of handlers and a suited, unsmiling man she had come to recognize from security footage shuffled crates marked only fresh frozen fish, priority. This was the shipment. The box codes matched those linked to seizures of endangered animals in Europe the previous year. Massive law enforcement stings had uncovered rare parrot eggs and sedated reptiles packed among ice and fish, all with forged documents tracing them to authorized exporters. Her heart hammered. The operation was proceeding at frightening speed. Plainclothes inspectors waved shipments past without actually opening any crates. Tessa, blending in as a catering supervisor, managed to take a short video. One crate, dropped, emitted a shrill, unmistakable cry. Fish don't scream, she thought, her hands slick with fear. Before she could witness more, a handler caught her gaze for too long. He gestured sharply. A warning or a threat? Tessa ducked out, sending her footage to Maria in a flurry of encrypted messages. Within hours, Maria's contact at Interpol responded. Evidence confirmed. These routes are linked with ongoing, multi-country investigations. Links to West Africa, Singapore, possibly even as far as Germany. She advised them to drop direct involvement. Warning, a major sweep is coming, but if your faces are recognized, you're both in danger. But it was too late. Tessa's phone buzzed with a message. Her own name, her badge number, and a single word. Stop. That night, someone repeatedly called her door and slipped a toy parrot under the frame, its eyes painted bright red. Maria's apartment was ransacked. Despite the fear, the timing was critical. The global sweep, Operation Thunder, launched just days later, coordinated with customs officials across 133 countries. Tessa, kept invisible by Maria's contacts, waited in protective housing as hundreds of would-be traffickers and brokers were arrested, endangered animals and false papers seized, and a handful of airport staff led away in handcuffs. The aftermath broke as a global newsflash: transcontinental animal smuggling syndicate dismantled, with top-level traffickers and complicit customs officers under indictment. The media named one leader, a Brazilian former airline executive known only as El Arquitecto. The man had engineered a decade-long empire laundering millions in profits through legitimate air shipments, bribing staff and using shell corporations to reroute illicit wildlife across continents. Azul Sky Airlines, under heavy scrutiny, suspended all cargo operations pending full audits. Customs agencies unearthed years of missing manifest data, identifying routes previously flagged by Tessa's sleuthing as top risk for high-value animal cargo: rhino horn, parrots, pangolins. Evidence provided by Tessa and Maria formed the backbone of the prosecution's case. Yet as authorities dug deeper, allegations of corruption within law enforcement and the courts emerged. Bribes, vanishing cases, and penalties so light they did little to deter future traffickers. Maria, now a celebrated but carefully shrouded whistleblower, testified by video link, her identity shielded for safety. For Tessa, the world shifted. Her name leaked on social media, prompting both hate and support. Traitor, from faceless accounts. Hero, thank you for saving them, from animal welfare groups. At Azul Sky, whispers spread. Some admired her courage, others avoided her entirely. Maria, still haunted by the risks, moved to an undisclosed post, tapped as a consultant for international wildlife crime prevention. Tessa quit flying, for now, but dedicated herself to public advocacy, partnering with NGOs to push airlines for stricter cargo regulations and transparency. The rescued animals, if they survived, were repatriated or sent to sanctuaries. Yet for every shipment caught, insiders admitted, dozens likely got through. The shadow market adapted, shifting routes, forging new alliances, as the cycle tried to begin anew. Imagine you're standing at the edge of an airport runway at dusk, the city's roar melting behind the descending sun. Tessa watches the jets overhead, remembering a time when flying was simply her way to see the world, never imagining she'd one day unearth a hidden empire trading in the lives of the planet's most vulnerable creatures. The world kept spinning after Operation Thunder. Airlines issued press releases, customs agencies announced record seizures, and for a flicker of time, headlines blazed with promises of reform. But soon, the spotlight faded. For Tessa and for the animals trafficked for profit, the aftermath was both victory and bitter reality. Invisible once by design, Tessa became visible everywhere she went. At first, advocacy was her armor. Press conferences, documentaries, partnership with NGOs, her inbox filled with public outcry and heartfelt thanks. Yet every time she locked her door or noticed a stranger in the terminal, the shadows of her past work would stir. Maria, too, thrust into the global fight, kept to the background, her knowledge invaluable, but her safety never guaranteed. Together, their bond was unshakable, a comradeship forged in the fire of risk. Not every animal rescued from the ring survived. Many, too weak or traumatized by the weeks spent in darkness, faded even after reaching safety. Those that did formed the bruised core of new sanctuary programs, haunting reminders, but also inspiration for stricter care and attention to rescue protocols worldwide. Globally, the case was a catalyst, but not a cure. International crime networks behind illegal wildlife trade continued to adapt, shifting routes from targeted airports to less regulated maritime shipping or private charters. Some airline insiders faced prosecution or suspension, yet as NGOs warned, trafficking syndicates are resilient, powered by poverty, loopholes, and the insatiable demand for exotic pets, traditional medicine, and luxury goods. Yet there was progress. New regulations emerged, stricter airline vetting procedures for all animal cargo, expansion of digital cargo tracking and manifest transparency, global training of customs officers, with programs in China, the EU, and Africa to spot smuggling red flags. New international collaborations like the 2025 Guard Wildlife Initiative pooled data and intelligence for a coordinated crackdown on wildlife crime, from airports to online black markets. Even so, enforcement remained one part of the puzzle. The deeper reasons, demand, economic desperation, weak law enforcement, still lay beneath the surface, shaping a trade worth up to $23 billion per year. Wildlife trafficking isn't just a crime against animals, it's a direct wound to whole ecosystems. Removing rare animals disrupts food webs, pushes species to extinction, and damages the genetic diversity our planet needs to stay resilient. From elephants to parrots, entire populations decline, sometimes never to recover. The illegal trade speeds up biodiversity loss at a pace that, by some estimates, rivals or exceeds the impact of climate change. It's easy to forget that each shipment of scales, horns, or live creatures also risks introducing zoonotic diseases, threatening both human health and the global economy through new pandemics. And the intertwinement with organized crime means law enforcement and national security suffer as well.